All right, so discipling with purpose requires innovation that's driven by practical theology. And this sticky faith innovation process is about compassion, creativity, and courage. Now, we've spent some time talking about compassion, but we really want to take a closer look at this idea of creativity. Now, when we think about creativity, let's just remember where we've been. We've already established that there are current narratives that young people tell themselves. Compassion requires that we pay attention to the narratives that they tell themselves. We've also reflected on the fact that there's this Jesus-centered narrative that we believe Jesus is inviting them into so that they can live their best lives. What we've done now is, instead of talking about creativity that happens everywhere all the time in multiple places, we've begun to focus our creativity. And this should be good news for you, youth leader, because you've probably been told that you are a creative person. You have likely been feeling that somehow you need to be creative everywhere all the time, and it's exhausting. The great thing about Sticky Faith Innovation is that you can take the creativity that you have and focus it in this space where we think about the current narrative and we think about the Jesus-centered narrative and the work that we're going to do right in that space. So innovation isn't merely about creating new ideas, as I mentioned. The other thing is that innovation isn't about just you creating ideas on your own. It's actually about inviting people into your process as well. And this should also be great news for you. A lot of times I think youth leaders think that they are supposed to be creative. They're supposed to go on a mountaintop and think deep and creative thoughts, and then come down from the mountaintop and declare to everyone around where the vision of youth ministry is going, and everyone will follow that. That is a high bar to keep, and it is exhausting. The great thing within Sticky Faith Innovation is you're able to focus your creativity in a particular place. So let's try to unpack how this works, okay? If we have our current narrative, we can begin to develop what we call a gap sentence. And it works like this. We say, because our students feel or believe their current narrative, okay, we will innovate, we will create some sort of ministry program or practice, right, in order that our students might believe or discover the Jesus-centered narrative. Okay, do you see how this works? This is a simple formula that you can use all the time, and it helps you to stay focused. What are we doing? Well, we know that students are thinking of this, and this is where we want them to go. This is what Jesus is calling them to, and this is the way that we're going to try to do ministry to help them walk that path. Now, as I mentioned before, we asked youth leaders from around the country to think about the current narratives that young people had. I want to focus on just one for a second and try to walk it out. A church actually did this, and this is what they came up with. They said, because our young people feel or believe that to be average is invisible, they decided they were going to innovate something in order that, here's their Jesus-centered narrative, in order that they might be seen, that they matter, and that they count. Okay, think about that for a second. What great news for a young person who thinks they're telling themselves to be average is to be invisible, and then to hear, no. No, the gospel says you're seen. You matter. You count. You've already gotten their attention simply by what Jesus is calling them to. So then the work then is to say, okay, how do we do ministry for them to begin to believe this invitation that Jesus has to invite them into a better way of thinking about how the world works, okay? So when we do that, this is where we can tap into our ministry skills. Perhaps there's just ways you want to improve your ministry. Like for this particular narrative, it could be something super simple, like we just want our volunteers who do small groups to show up 15 minutes earlier. So when a student walks into the youth room or in the house or in the space where we meet, they see their leader and their leader greets them. Right? I mean, it can be that simple, which can be really powerful. You also have community assets, just the community that you're a part of. You can tap into that. And then you also have team processes where you're actually working on figuring this out together. When we begin to do this, we focus our creativity and we begin to develop something that can truly help young people walk in the ways of Jesus as we accompany them, that's focused, that's helpful, and most importantly, is hopeful. And that is purposeful discipleship.